So today marks the 1 year anniversary of starting this whole YouTube endeavor. And I am, of course, back at the cemetery where I started it back then. Not hanging out with Tyler's grave this time, or at his grave this time, but just over on this little back road with my dogs in the car, because we just walked in a little over a mile, and little Miss, Zibley's passed out in the front seat. She's 11 and a half, and she kept letting me know she was ready to be done. It's like, we're not to the car yet. We're not there. We're almost there, but we're not there. And they kept pulling off to where, like, we usually park, because there's, like, this one spot up at the front of the cemetery. We frequently park up there. And then there's another spot where there's two roads that go right next to each other, so you can kind of see if there's any traffic or not. And sometimes we'll park over there, and then that way, if anybody comes over and decides they want to go through that way, it's not an issue. This one is a little back street, so in the old part of the cemetery, but it doesn't go all the way through. There's like a concrete block a little ways behind me, and like the other side where it would go around if it wasn't blocked off, there's a lot of gravel and a bunch of fallen leaves and some fallen limbs and stuff too. So yeah, it's not conducive to driving through, so I don't know, a good place to hang out and do a little video, because ideally people aren't over in this area, and yeah, I mean, sometimes other people park here to walk their dogs, but whatever. So kind of been a little overly excited, I guess. I mean, first, that whole 1 year anniversary of starting this thing, because I feel a whole lot different than I did when I started out. And of course, back then I was terrified to the whole, using my voice thing. That was a big ordeal. And, I have talked several times about how I went live on Instagram for like a minute or less than a minute the first time to kind of break the ice on it, and I cried immediately afterwards just because it was so traumatic for me. I can now do videos without crying afterwards. Whether I cry in the middle of them is still debatable, because that still is not unusual. But I feel like I'm at a whole different place. It just feels like there's a lot of stuff that's been shifting here lately. And at one point, I think it was back in April, because I was going to get my piercings. When I was going to, actually it was before my appointment, actually, I had kind of this idea that I thought it would be cool if I saw like my actual birthday out in the wild somewhere, not birthday related, like on a license plate or a phone number or whatever, and that it would kind of be a little cue that something was happening, right? So when I was going to get my piercings, I ended up, there was first a truck that passed in front of me that had my birth date in the license plate number. And I was like, ooh, really? And I wanted to see something again. So then I see a phone number that had my birthday in reverse. It's like, okay, well, that's still pretty cool. And then there was one other place, but I don't remember right off what it was. But I just remember it's like, third time's the charm. What's that mean? And then by the time I got to the piercing place, I was so anxious. Then I was like, I just kind of realized it's like, I don't need that kind of stress. I don't need to have any kind of awareness of what's going on as it's actually happening, because then I'm just going to like freak out and have a meltdown or something. But it's still kind of interesting, or an interesting thought. I have seen it. I actually saw, going into the piercing weekend, there was a day I took my cousin I had to pick him up to take him from like the collision repair shop to the rental place because they sent his car to the wrong place. And on my way over to pick him up, I saw I saw 7981. It's like, are we on a countdown? And then the next day I saw 7982, and then of course the third day was the day I was getting my piercings, and then I saw 7983, and that's my birthday, so I was all excited until I wasn't. So relevant because I had to verify the date, but I looked it up, and the day that I took my grandma to get her haircut was October 30th. And I parked next to this car, didn't think anything of it. On the way back out after her appointment, I realized that the license plate had 7983 on it. It's like, oh, there it is. So then it was just kind of fun, like a little nudge from the universe. Hey, you paying attention? Yep, paying attention. Got a picture of it. Yeah. And then it's like, so what does that mean? So that was October 30th. And then there were a whole lot of, like, of course, since this time last year, was leading up to me getting to this point of starting this whole YouTube thing and doing the first video, which was, 1 year ago today. God, and I was super anxious, and I was sitting over by Tyler's grave. It's like, needs support of a friend kind of a thing, but by his tombstone. And like I said, I deleted that one. I deleted all my original ones, but I did repost them, but they have a different date on them, so then it's kind of a bummer now, because it's like I don't still have it there to say there's my evidence. It existed on this date. But oh well, is what it is. I did that to myself, as I have a history of doing things like that to myself. So obviously there's like a lot of little anniversary points in the past week or so, leading up to diving into the YouTube thing. And the other day I was talking to Roxy, my derby friend, and I was talking to her about the whole twin flame thing. I don't remember why it came up. I know she's not on the twin flame path, so she doesn't understand it and doesn't really buy into it, because what she has seen of it is what people have said in like her, one of her Facebook groups or something, and most of those were based on what people who'd watched a shitty Netflix documentary saw from the documentary. So yeah, I mean, if those are your frames of reference, you're probably not going to buy into it, and you're probably going to think people who do are suckers. But when that whole documentary came out, I know there were several pages that I follow that were like, whatever you do, don't watch it, don't let that negativity in. One girl she explained it for, it's just one of those, basically a way for people to have a negative viewpoint of something, so they talk down about it, because if it's not your experience, then you're not going to agree to it, right? Which is fine. But anyway, there's been a couple times that I have talked to her about it and actually given her some kind of my spiel as far as how I know that it is my journey, and like all these little green flags along the way of, yes, this is where you're supposed to be, this is what you're supposed to be doing, keep going, keep going, keep going. And last week something came up, and I was talking to her about the importance of the number 8 for the connection, and she made a comment, because I told her that I had I don't remember what, it was like 83 or 84, I think, was the video that I was on at that point in time. And I mentioned that to her, and she's like, what if 88 is the one he finds? It's like, interesting. Interesting point. I just saw 1010 on the timer when I said that. So, yes, possibility. So video 88 was the last one that I did, and I think it's one that I'm probably the most proud of so far. Because, you know, it was more positive. Most of them, it's like I've had the tendency to go back to the negative issues in my life and get a little overly preoccupied with those. But then the last one is more focused on, the possibility of this whole podcast collaboration with Ben and my brother. And it's like, I was really excited about that. And I'm still really excited about that. And I know my brother's he's more reluctant than the other two of us. But I think I can kind of I'm gonna push a little bit, but not like so much that he's like, no. Because I think when he really comes to see my vision, or what I'm like, the development of my vision, or these kind of thoughts that I have about it, and because just based it on me, him, and Ben, we have a whole lot of things in common, and the biggest is that this whole healing thing is important to all of us. And of course, my journey has been on YouTube, so doing this talk therapy thing, it takes me back to that dream where the girl said that I needed to start sharing, holy crap, I needed to start sharing the story I already had to tell before more of my mission would be made clear to me. And, yeah. So I feel like that's been like a whole thing in and of itself. Like, starting out was so traumatic and overwhelming because it was starting to use my voice, which I had felt continuously throughout my life was continuously taken away from me, and shut down. And, there's a whole lot of rejection around anytime I did try to speak, and most people most of the connections that I had, making sure to snuff that possibility of me using my voice. And the other day I had, I remember being in the living room with my grandparents and my parents, and my brother was probably there, but I don't remember that part. But it was after the bullying stuff started. My grandparents had just moved back from Oklahoma, and I just remember feeling like I was the elephant in the room. Like, there's this thing that needs to be discussed, but nobody's discussing it. And feeling like screaming at me would have been better than just ignoring it, but it felt like something else was going on. And as I've cleared up space and done a lot of this healing work, it's like I have this sense of the energies communicating during that time frame, and just my grandpa's energy of, she's going to be the one that ruins this family or humiliates this family, and she needs to be stopped, kind of a thing. And I know it sounds probably a little over dramatic, but it's that was what I felt in the moment back then. But it's now when I look back into it, it's I can actually hear what's being communicated now that I don't have all the trauma and density of the world just weighing down on me and keeping me from being able to see what's actually going on. It's this is stuff that's been going on my whole life, as I've always been aware of the energies and what the energies were communicating, even though I didn't know like maybe it didn't have the words that are now coming across back then, but still the awareness that something was going on at like deeper levels, and somehow I was the only one aware of it. Yeah. So that's kind of been a whole interesting thing too. But anyway, so I was really excited about this potential collaboration in my last video. And so then when I went home and I went to post it, of course it pops up the file name on my computer has his birth date in it. It's like, oh, okay. So there's another thing. You know, I told Roxy and my cousin Aaron about that. It's like, hey, so here's this whole thing. And then Roxy made a comment about what if 88 is the one that he finds. It's like, I liked where I was at in that whole video, so I feel like that's a good thing. But then to actually have those things kind of overlap. Well, today being the 1 year anniversary, as I said before many times already, hold on a second. Sorry. So Taz and Gidget get seatbelts so they stay in the back seat, and Taz was breathing kind of funny because he was trying to use the armrest as a pillow and couldn't reach it because the seatbelt was holding him back. And he wasn't bothering him. He was just keep doing it and breathing all. So I figured I needed to fix that for him. But anyway, so I've been thinking for a while that it's just one of those thoughts like, all right, universe, if this is still on track, if this is still the thing that we're doing, I want to see like these particular letters, right? And today I saw them. And I'd seen them in other orders, but, you know, and I'm going to write about that in book 7. So I will not say specifically too many details about that here. But today I saw the letters in the correct order, and it's like, oh, yay. So that was on a license plate on a car that had just got there and had just parked, and the guy was out, and me and my dogs were walking around, and then there it is. It's like, there they are. Awesome. So yeah, I feel like, oh yeah, and so that stuff's been fun in and of itself because I've been seeing like the little markers for myself, you know, and it takes me back to that whole thing when I was in high school and had that moment where I was thinking. It was because like I was ass deep in suicidal ideation, and then we did some writing project I was in a accelerated English class, and it was like college level class, or get a college credit for my senior year. So that was kind of one of those things I did. But one of our little projects had something to do with, okay, it might not have been the whole project for everybody, but I feel like we were talking about name meanings. I feel like that was a part of it. But either way, you know, I looked up the meaning of like my first name. I knew because that's means princess. So, and then like my middle name, and then I like wrote a poem that has to do with you know, just stuff that I was thinking about. But I thought about at that time, what if I basically, you know, set this path with little markers along the way, like little reminders to myself of who I am and what I'm here to do. And I remember clear as day thinking this in high school. And now I'm seeing very much, it's like, this is completely accurate. I love it. So yeah. But of course, back then, dealing with like the whole suicidal ideation and all that stuff, not having the healing work that I've been doing in the past 5 years especially, but like really everything amped up so much more last year after I figured out who he was and who he was to me. So yeah, but likewise, Still haven't met him. So, I mean, yeah. But, yeah, there was that brief connection on a live stream that he was doing. And when he responded to something I said, it was like, oh, I've been noticed. You know, it was this whole ordeal, and I was like on the verge of panicking because this person that I thought was like just like in a whole complete different universe happened to respond to my comments. Like, okay. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, 2 mornings ago, whatever. I had a dream, or was it? It might have been yesterday, actually. Everything runs together. I had a dream that Tyler appeared in again. Of course, he appeared to me in the one in 2019, the week that I was leaving my ex for the last time. And I've talked many times about how there was this big span of time where I was so frustrated because I couldn't remember what he said to me in the dream. Like, it paralleled what had actually happened. Like, okay, because he died in July of 2018. So, before then, like the first time I went and saw him, he was in a coma. The second time, I went with a friend from my drumline years, and she was, it was funny because, like, the reason I was up here was because I had left my ex on, like, a trial run. I realize now it was seeing what all I needed to do and have established before I could disconnect completely and get out of there for real. So I was in Indiana. I left my ex in December 2017, which I later found out Tyler had recently moved back home that time too, and had a bunch of stuff that was kind of going wrong for him. But in, I think it was May or June, I went and saw him when he was in a coma and went with my mom. And I just remember being there and being so aggravated. I was there with my mom again. It's like, how come everything I've tried to do in my life, it's like, if it's a big thing, there she is. It's like, I can't do big things on my own. What the fuck? You know, so when Deborah sent me a message after I was in town because I was on like a trial run separation time and getting my shit together for that. The day she contacted me, I was supposed to go to some get together with my former in-laws. My ex-mother-in-law's family was having a thing, and I got really wound up about feeling like I needed to take something, not knowing what to take, and ending up basically just like freaking out and talking myself out of going altogether. It's like I can't be there for whatever reason, you know. And I loved her family. They were awesome, and I probably wouldn't have even blocked her if it wasn't for the fact that I knew that she would be reporting back anything that I had on Facebook or whatever, and I needed him completely unaware of everything I was doing at that time. So I blocked them all. But I did really like his mom's side of the family. Anyway, so I was like having this meltdown, and I finally sent her a message. I was like, look, I'm not feeling great. I need to not go. And she's like, oh, okay. And then, a little bit later, Deborah sends me a message, and she's like, hey, I'm in town, and I really want to go see Tyler, but I don't want to go by myself. I was like, yes, I want to go too. And it was nice because he was awake, and we actually had a good conversation with him. And one of the things that I think stood out the most to me was he was surprised at how many people had come to see him. And, from like the drumline days, because we all lost touch, and he didn't apparently think most of us ever thought of him again. And it's like, dude, I don't know if I said it, but it's like, oh, I'm sure I'm not the only one that had him on a pedestal, because he was the one that, we went away to college, and then he was doing the thing he wanted to do, and then he was playing drums in a band, and they were going on tour and stuff. So it's like, he was living the dream as far as I knew. But, like those times where I had wanted to reach out to him and I just could not, because I was so overwhelmed with the idea of I didn't want my sadness to contaminate his life, and he was living the dream, and I didn't want to screw that up for him. I now think that had I connected with him, maybe we could have had, maybe we could have helped each other on that end. Like, he was a big drinker. It wasn't suicide that got him. I think it had to do with how much he was drinking, and had been for a long time. So, it's like all those times I felt really strongly I needed to connect with him, and then couldn't bring myself to do it because I was afraid that my sadness would contaminate his life. And then I did learn from that, because I had a coworker, worked at this one factory during the pandemic, and my manager of my little area that I was in, that dude was awesome, and his name was Tim, and we had good conversations, and he was always talking about wanting to get a group of people together outside of work sometime, but of course there was a pandemic going on, and it made it kind of difficult. And he was one of those people that anytime he talked about his wife, you could tell there was something special. They had something special. It's like, yeah, that's good. And it was one of those things that okay, first I ended up leaving. At first I was going to transfer to a different location, and then I decided going into getting ready to do that, it's like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And I told him that I wanted to leave to go work on the writing project, right? So I think I'd been gone 3 weeks, and he kept getting the runaround with the company, where he kept trying to get promoted, and he'd done all this good stuff for the company, and they kept promoting people around him that weren't doing near the work that he was, but just because they didn't have the connection with the staff at that level either, so he got stuck because he was doing so good in that slot. And that was like a big frustration. And I'd been gone, I think about 3 weeks, and I got this really strong sense that I needed to send him a message and check in. So I did, and we had a good conversation. And he told me that he was still kind of getting the runaround at work, but he was pushing back, and because they said, oh, he hadn't done this, and this, and he was like, yes, I have, more than once. So he was pushing back on that kind of stuff, and they were still not cool with him. This dog licking the seat. 3 days after we had that conversation, I found out he had a serious heart attack, and it had killed him. And I very much believe it was entirely work related, and yet it was on an off day, so it wasn't even wasn't their problem at that point anyway, because it hadn't happened on their watch, but I'm confident it was very much, very much, excuse me if you can hear my dog farting in the background, but it was very much work-related stress that had gotten to that point. It's like, ugh. And then at that point, it's like, then I had a couple people like, will you ever go back there? And it's like, no, as far as I'm concerned, they basically killed him. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that there are plenty of other factors that would have been, well, factors, but there's no doubt in my mind that was one of the biggest ones. It was just how much they were screwing him over. So, yeah. But after the whole experience with Tyler and all the times I felt like I needed to reach out and didn't, and then he ended up passing away at 34. That was a whole thing. So, started there because the dream. Okay, so, in the dream, I went to see him, but I went by myself. And he was clearly in a medical facility of some sort, but it was like a house, and there were purple walls, and there was still all like the medical equipment and everything. It was like the room that I saw him in when he was in a coma. First time he was in a coma and we didn't talk. Second time we talked. The third time, which there wasn't actually a third time, when I actually saw him in the hospital. So the third time, and I think this is the parallel there too, because the third time I saw him was at the funeral. And the third time in the dream, he was walking away out of the front of the building, and I knew it was going to be the last time that I saw him. And like in the dream, I ran over and kissed him, and because I knew it was going to be the last time I saw him, and it was just whatever. And he said something to me and then walked away. It's like I could never remember what it was that he said, and it drove me nuts for the longest time. But I got to a point where, like I kept coming back to it. It's like, what did he say? And then eventually it's like, you know what? When it is time for me to know, I will know what he said. And then I just kind of let it be. Well, I finally figured out what he said. And it was because of this whole twin flame ordeal. I had this morning mind you, the dream was March 2019, like the last week I was in Alabama before I left my ex for good. Realizing what he said was this past, like, April, I think. March or April. Once I started this back up, it was still very much like the twin flame stuff was kind of, it's been leading this whole journey, man. Everything that's happened is largely because of this connection. And so I woke up this one morning, just kind of having this little daydream of sorts, where I was talking to this guy and a couple of his friends and telling them about the dream. And, I'm like kind of awake, but not fully awake, and just kind of letting my mind wander and see what happens, kind of a thing. So in this dream, I'm telling them about this dream that I had with Tyler back in 2019. And I tell them the story, and it's like, but I don't know what he said. And then just clear as day, I hear Tyler say, he's coming. And like, after that, I was like, wait, what? Because, well, I mean, I wasn't sure that was connected. And then like almost immediately, like an alert went off on my phone, and there was something, and it had the number 19 in it, which of course is important for various reasons. But largely, Tyler died on July 19th, 2018. So for a while when I saw 719, it was Tyler's number. I mean, it's still Tyler's number, but now I also see, 429, which was his birthday. I see that, and it's like, yep, Tyler. Or just 29 or 34, because that was the day that was how old he was when he died. Those are all little nudges that, Tyler's communicating, basically, or checking in. And so at that time, it was just 719. Well, my phone had an alert pop up, and there's the number 19. It's like, is that connected? It's like, that feels awfully connected, but you kind of still in that daydream state. I was like, I ran over to a cabinet and was trying to find something that had 719 on it, and of course I saw myself finding, like, on a mug or something. It's like, having a meltdown. What actually happened later that day, I come over here with my dogs to the cemetery, and we were walking, and we get back to the car. Well, we're starting to walk in the direction of the car, and Gidget, who at the time she was my dog that, like, never went to the bathroom on a leash, because she'd never been thoroughly trained that was okay to do, because she was 10 months old. We were working on training, and when I had to leave her with my ex the first time, I was trying to figure out what all I had to do to get out of there that last time. Of course, a big part of the reason there had to be a second time that was the big time that everything happened was because I was having to move back home with my parents, and my mom said that since she was watching my niece all the time and they didn't know Gidget and Taz, I couldn't bring them. So obviously it was like, I think I knew at that point, it's like, well, I'm obviously not done there for good unless he can prove that he's not a complete jackass and can take care of these dogs, which he did not. So yeah, obviously they're with me now. But sorry, there's a bird out there. I think it's a vulture. When I started this video, there was a hawk that flew overhead, and of course hawks have been everywhere here lately, and they're really important for everything as well, because I started seeing them all the time. Well, I've been seeing them all the time for a while, and they've been doing a lot of construction around our area, so like they were more noticeable because they're cutting down all the trees in most areas. So they were hanging out over the power lines near our house. And then, of course, there was this one day when I was leaving the factory that I worked with Tim at. There was a day I felt like I needed to go in to work 2 hours late, but I couldn't think of any reason why I should possibly do that. So I ignored that little voice that said, hey, don't go in yet. And I went anyway, and then I got hit by a school bus. There's a whole drama with that, and then I didn't get to work for 2 hours, or I was 2 hours late to work anyway. So it's like, basically that was just telling me that something was going to happen, and I needed to just not go in yet, and I would still get there at the time I was going to get there. Well, without all the stress. So clearly I got the stress, but yeah. Oh, I wandered again. But there was the day I was thinking through that, and like, clearly I need to trust my intuition more, and that little voice that says, hey, do this thing, or don't do this thing, or just hang out for a little bit. It's okay. I need to listen to that. And then like the hawk swooped down in front of me. It's like, that was for me. Anyway, yeah. There have been a lot of them here lately. The other day I was driving back from the blood center, and there was one perched on this light post, but it was kind of out in front of some trees that had I not looked over at exactly that moment, I wouldn't have even seen it. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Or the other day when I was taking my grandparents, my aunt and my mom, to an appointment in Greenfield for my grandpa when he was at home and shouldn't have been. I was taking the country roads. Those are always better around here, but especially right now, like there's freaking construction on all like the big busy streets. So it was just less headache. So I'm on this country road driving through, and because when it got to that road intersects with our road, there was a roundabout, so it's easy to get onto now. Whereas if I went the next road south, there's not a roundabout there yet. There is the one street over, but that's not helpful on the road we lived on. So I was driving them back from this appointment, and there's this car coming at me, and he's in the middle of the road, clearly not paying attention. I'm pretty sure he's playing on his phone or something. So I'm like laying on the horn, and finally he moves over, and when he goes past, there's this hawk that flies off the power line, and like it was right in front of me in the lane. It's like, ooh, you gonna move? And it eventually went back over and onto the a different part of the power line a few yards down. And my grandpa said something. He was impressed. I was impressed because, hey, that was pretty cool. And nobody in the back seat, I think, even registered that anything had happened. But yeah, so hawks are important, right? So, anyway, I don't think that had to do with the story that I was telling, which was the Tyler number thing and the he's coming part. So that day, I had this, I had the little daydream where I hear him say clear as day, he's coming, because that was, I was frustrated that I didn't know what he had said. And then I was explaining this frustration to these people that I've yet to actually meet in person. And he says it clear as day, like he's standing there right next to me. That day, I went over, the first thing I did when we were walking was we went over past his grave. And I was, as I was walking past, I just shook my head and was laughing because, number 19 had popped up on my phone. And it was like smart ass. And I heard him just clear as day laughing. It just sounded like somebody turned the volume way down on it. And so it was kind of fun. But then, because it continues, we weren't done there. We kept walking, and we got over to where we were almost back to the car, and Gidget stops, and she's the one that never got trained. That's where we were at. She never got trained to use the bathroom on the leash. She's always anytime she went to do it, she was always like, is this okay? But that day she stopped and pooped. And it's like, do not. It's like every now and then with Ziva and Taz, I have the tendency to get frustrated when it's like the second or third time I'm cleaning it up on the same walk. But for her, it's like, we're not doing that. We cannot do that. She needs to know this is okay. So I was like slightly frustrated because we were almost back to the car, and then we had to stop and had to clean that up and then go over to the dumpster. Well, a truck pulled in while I was standing there waiting for her to do her business and getting it cleaned up. They parked over in this little section that we're in now. But so yeah, I clean it up, get the dogs all in the car, and then this dog poop bag hanging out the window, my open window, and we drive over to the dumpster, which is in front of this little shack, with the mowing equipment. And I pull in there, and I happen to glance over at the truck, and the truck's license plate is 719. It's like confirmation in the dream, confirmation multiple times in my actual waking life. That was the case, in that he had said he's coming. It's like, okay. Read you loud and clear. I laughed out loud. Obviously I'm laughing at it now. 4444 as I was telling that story. Yeah. So it's been like a whole thing. So anyway, I guess, yeah, it was probably yesterday morning. Like I said, time, what is time? It all bleeds together. I don't know what's what anymore. But I think it was yesterday. I had a dream where Tyler was in the dream. Like, none of it really makes sense for me, because in the dream it was like there was a small group of us that got together and kind of, like, just remember him or something. I don't know. For some reason, I was going to have everybody sign this box top with like a little shipping label thing, and it was like that was the only thing. I don't know if I was planning on putting it in like a time capsule or something, that this was the small group of us that got together to remember him this next time, because then the first time there was a bigger group. I don't know. But whatever. So in the dream, the group separates before I got this done, and so I'm chasing everybody down trying to get them to sign this thing. And I stop and I'm getting this one signature, and he says, "Is this okay?" And it's like, why wouldn't this be okay? This is in your honor. And then I realize that I was talking to Tyler, and he signed this thing, and first, middle, and last name, they were all there. It's all exactly in his writing as I remember it. And of course, there are like multiple layers to like these, like dream time doesn't make sense because nothing is in order. But I don't think, I think linear time is just for reference points on this journey anyway. And if X, Y, and Z happen, it leads to this stuff, right? That kind of stuff. It's just a reference point. So in the dream, I had him sign the thing. And it's like, yeah, it's okay. And then these two other guys, I think Ken and Corey, they saw his name on it, and they were like, kind of a how'd you get that kind of a thing. But then at the same time, I'm still talking to Tyler, and when I realize that he's there in front of me, it's like there was this like white room, and it had a few boxes in it. It wasn't a huge room, just a small little space, but there was like a gate that he was behind. That's interesting in and of itself now that I'm thinking about it that level. Anyway, so it was like a baby gate or something. In the dream, I think I stepped over it and like was talking to, like, up closer to him, and I'm talking to him. It's like, can I see you more like this? I said, I see the numbers all the time and I know you're there, but can I actually see you more? And he just kind of shrugged. And then, like, when I went back on the other side of it and then turned around to say something, he was gone. And then I'm continuing on this mission to have these people, like, I don't even remember most of the people that were there, that I was going to track down. But Paul was one of them, and when I approached him, he's like, what's wrong? Because he could tell that there was something weird about me, right? And I was like, you're not going to believe this. And I said, Tyler signed this, and, Ken and Corey saw his signature even, but then I tell him the story about having this conversation with Tyler, but then when he looks at the box top with these little signatures, it's not there anymore. It's like, where'd it go? And then I was all upset because I had like this whole experience, and then like the name that was on this thing was no longer on this thing anymore, and now that I told him about it, like, he wasn't aware of it. So I'm feeling, as I'm telling this story now, there's a whole lot more to this dream that I'm gonna have to like sit with, because like that baby gate thing makes me think like something with the veil. And I crossed over it and was talking to him, and I could see him clear as day, but then when I went back, he was gone. So that in and of itself is kind of a and then like the fact that when I went and talked to Paul, and that was like the most real and the most 3D physical part of the dream, I think, then it wasn't there at all, and then I just sound like a crazy person. Which, hey, whatever. And but that was like yesterday. And then today is today, and the fact that we're at the 1-year anniversary of doing this thing, and that's the whole big thing in and of itself, and just like all the connections that I'm making because of this whole journey that I've been on is it's just blows my mind. Yeah, I woke up this morning and couldn't go back to sleep for a while, and I was writing about how it's like it makes perfect sense that the feminine has to go first on the healing process, because I was writing about like all these different layers to okay, like the fact that most of my journey was wrapped up in feeling like I was a whore because that's what everybody that's what my life kept telling me I was or was expected of me. But then once I started doing this healing process and realizing how everything was connected and how everything got manipulated, and people basically created this stuff that got stuck to me that wasn't even mine to deal with to begin with, right? So it's like it makes perfect sense. And with that, thinking about snag my nose ring. Okay, like the fact that there's so many people. Okay, I remember growing up, being one of those people where all it takes is a rumor, and then they're literally able to manipulate how you see yourself, and how that belief you have of yourself can take you down some like really dark places, and within yourself, and just this is so deep, I don't even know how to really touch it. It's that whole healing spiral and just like the different levels of it. But when I was talking to my brother the other day, I was like, okay, first off, it's like, that feeling when a girl approaches you and hits on you, and he's like, yeah, that's a weird experience. And it's like that kind of level where it's like we get continuously told that we're just so awful and unworthy of love, essentially, and because we're whores or whatever, and people, the rumors, I think everybody's known somebody that got made fun of, or that they've contributed to making fun of, because they thought things were true about them because somebody said that was the case. But then when it's all said and done, it's not the case at all, and it was just my story getting hijacked, but then how different things came up along the way that further compounded those beliefs and made me feel even worse, and took me to that place where I was able to marry my ex-husband. And as I've said many times, the reason I was able to get into that situation was because I was unhealed and was toxic as well. That whole toxicity thing, that is entirely wrapped up in the refusal to do the healing work, to figure out why things have happened the way they have, and just getting stuck there. And that's why it's so important that the feminine goes first, because in spite of having all of these see if it's snoring, all like these dudes along the way, perpetuating the idea of knowing something about you. And you have to go into that heart space and be able to do this deep healing work from within. And it's only through being able to do that work that it sort of demands that the masculine step up into higher levels of himself as well. And I feel like, just like my connections with Ben and my brother, I feel like they're perfect examples of, I've been doing this healing work and they're having to do healing work too. Not because specifically of the healing work that I am doing, but because that, that point where we're all connected. Like, okay, the fact that there has been so much garbage beliefs on, or for men with, men and boys, that, it's not okay to have emotions. And it'd be really nice if my parents would stop talking in the group chat, because I keep having these messages pop up across the top of my screen. But yeah, okay, so it's like, I know that the men in my life, even when they were, as kids in high school, as kids in middle school, I remember that sense of it wasn't okay for them to have emotions. And it always felt really weird to me. And, like there was always this thing where, they get demonized or made fun of for showing weakness. But it's like, that's not weakness at all. God, stop it, people. We're gonna have like 50 messages when I'm done, just because they're going back and forth in this message that I don't have to be a part of, yet they're including me in anyway. Anyway, but like the whole, and as I said, as I was moving back into that, there was 719, which was Tyler number again, of course, since I've talked about that a little bit ago. That emotions are a sign of weakness or something, and they're not. But that's another way that the feminine has been demonized, because that's the aspect, the two, the yin and the yang, they're together. You can't separate the masculine aspect and the feminine aspect. In order for us to be able to have a healthy existence, we have to unite the two within ourselves to be able to get to that point. I mean, for me, a lot of it has been wrapped up on the twin flame journey, just as a point of reference to help me understand and make these connections, because that's what I'm here to do, is to make the connections, understand them, and be able to teach those points in the situations I find myself in. But like, I always have been super protective of the good guys, and I've talked about that on here several times. And I think it's those essentially are the ones that have the most balance between the two aspects of themselves, even though this world has made it very difficult for them to exist, they still exist. And as much as they are hurting through these situations, they're still existing and trying to make sense of things, right? So as the feminine collective does this work, there's that part for the masculines as well that are affected by what is happening with the majority of the feminine collective, and that feminine aspect that they carry within themselves. Because even anger is a big part of that. That whole Kalima archetype, that anger and destruction. I've had to contend with that a bit this year too. So yeah, but as they are then able to hold space for the feminine collective and that aspect within themselves, it brings them into that more of that divine masculine energy, because they're having to hold space that they were told repeatedly, we're shown repeatedly that it was acceptable to make fun of or, brutalize women in various ways. And, as the healing work is being done in the heart space, it's also, that's where it's, okay, so the biggest thing on this twin flame journey has been showing me is that I've always had this masculine aspect within myself as well. And what that looks like is that space where I can hold space to be able to have all the emotions that I'm able to have, but also have the frame within myself to know that I am safe and secure in who I am, regardless of whether there's anybody to take care of me. Where, we show up in this world and we're taught that we have to have something outside of ourselves, but it's within us all along. But as I find my frame and am able to flow around that frame and that sense of safety, and I'm able to move and be who I'm here to be and what I'm here to do, as that's able to flow more freely, it also, it goes on that other end where it's the heart space connection. So I've heard a lot of like the twin flame teachers that will talk about the feminine has to go within to do the work of healing the heart, and then the masculine, he's basically thawing out from the inside out and, stepping into higher levels of himself as well, which, that's, man, there's so much to this. And like the more connections that I make, the more I love that I've been on this journey and that I'm making sense of it now. But man, there's so much, and just trying to organize my thoughts. And I feel like I'm always talking circles, but that's always what I've done in life. It's like, because that's how the journey goes. Healing is a spiral. You continuously come back to things that you thought you understood, and you see them differently and see different layers of them. But okay, so for the twin flame aspect of this whole journey, like, I've talked many times about that dream that I had, where the first time I had it was 2020, and my twin flame and these three of the guys that he's connected with that I know of, are on stools behind this couch, and I'm sitting on the couch with my ex, and there's so much anger toward my ex that, they were all sitting there like they're at a funeral parlor or something, and they're unaware of us or seem unaware of us, and maybe they're not completely unaware, but like they had their eyes on whatever was in front of us, and it seemed like an old TV or something, whatever. It was just like the changing of colors and like you would see on a TV screen. Excuse me. And then once I started being able to go back into the dream, the first time, the dream, when I had the dream, there was all the anger, and there was so much that I had to get beyond for that. And then when I started doing more of the healing work, then I was able to be aware of my twin talking to me, and he said, if you need help, let me know. But I said I felt like it was something I needed to do on my own. And then now I'm realizing, hey, I didn't have to do it on my own the whole time. They've always been there. Okay, but next time I go into the dream, it's like this whole... I mean, there was another spot where I connected to somebody else in another area of the dream. But then I go back to him, and like another time I go into it, it's like we're in like this dreamy space. We're aware of each other, but it's like everything is through a fog. And then the last time that I went into it, it's like his eyes, like he was locked on me completely, and it's like I just had this wave of emotion or wave of energy go through me. It's like, whoa. You know, it was like this whole other thing suddenly going on. And what I have come to realize is, okay, these guys that I've been seeing, there's, okay, the 5 guys, you know, I know that in that dream, there were 4 of them behind us on the couch, and the other one was in another area. And when I had the actual dream, when I was sleeping, he looked at me like he wanted to say something to me, but then, like, we couldn't connect all the way. So at one point I wanted to see what it was, or I wanted to know what it was, and then I was able to go into it and have that whole experience too. And it's like, oh, this is like a whole thing that's like kind of interactive, so that's kind of cool. But anyway, last year, I realized, okay, when I was skating all the time, I was realizing that I was always connected to these people, right? And mind you, I have been seeing them since I was in high school. But at the time, the reference point that I had back then for, you know, 5 guys that I was connected to somehow, and we're supposed to change the world. So my reference point back then was the guy that I was dating was in this band, and good Christian boys now. But it never made sense for them, like, it never made sense for me that it would be them, because one of them was just indifferent to me and the other one hated me, you know. And then Tyler died, and I haven't spoken to Brad since we broke up. Well, I think except for once. And then Paul, like, you know, we have the usual happy birthday, because he's 1 year younger than me, so we've always made a point to say happy birthday to each other. But that's like that's the big part of our connection anymore, you know. So then last year I realized it's this other group that my twin flame is connected with. And, you know, I started experiencing their energy, like, in everything I was doing. Once I was aware of them and who they were and the connection that we shared, it's like, there's something way bigger going on here than I had any idea about. And, oh man, that was one thing that going into this dream kind of showed me, was that, you know, they've had this connection. And, okay, basically, there's a vulture as I'm talking. So there's 5 of them, and then there's me. And no, this is not exclusive. This is the only type of connection. This is just my reference point for a whole lot of stuff. Basically, since they're doing this networking stuff, they have, they're the root system, right? So they're doing this work at the earthly level, if you will. That's networking and establishing a root system. And in the dream, I was on a couch with my ex, and they were on stools above, kind of looking over and completely oblivious to what was going on at the level that I was at that point in time. But oh, this is so hard to keep organized in my head and like make sense of it as I go. This is why I will be writing this stuff down and probably have several books with this information as it makes more sense and I gain more clarity on it, because this is always what I was here to do, to understand. But they're establishing this network system, right? And while they're doing that, I'm going into like these deep, dark levels within myself and figuring out, like the ways of the world, how people even get into these dark places. And meanwhile, we're all working together. They're helping to be able to release the heavy shit that I was always experiencing along the way. Yeah, 111 up there. So at a time I was unaware that they were even out there, they were still helping me to transmute this heavy, dense energy for the collective, right? And like I said, it's not exclusively us doing this work. This is just my reference point, my frame of reference. But like, we're all kind of doing this, like our generation anyway. This is what we're here to do, is transmute this heavy, dense energy and lighten the load for everybody else so that collectively, we can help the earth rise even. So yeah. Wow. I was thinking about that. I have said on here another time that there was this one, I think the first dream that my twin flame appeared in to me. I was in a bathroom stall and he came in and it was like he was cleaning the bathroom. It's like, the hell's going on? Why is he cleaning the bathroom, And I feel like now that I'm able to... Excuse me, I have Thumper in the back seat back here. Tazzy, you done yet? You done? Huh? That was a lot of fussing. Anyway, yeah. But like, oh, got my shoelace set on hooked on the brake pedal again. Anyway, so. Okay, so the first dream, which was shortly after I connected with his energy and like life space, right? The first dream was I was in the bathroom stall and he was like cleaning the bathroom, and it's like, why are you doing that? That don't make sense. But now as I'm like thinking back to it and thinking at it, oh, my dogs are going nuts now. It's been an hour. We need more water. Zeeby, quit licking. There you go. Taz wants more. Of course he does. It was, I think, because I've heard him say in an interview that he hoped he never, something to the effect of he hoped he never got so big that he forgot where he came from, kind of a thing, or forgot the little guy, and didn't still want to help others, right, that are starting out. And that it makes sense now that I've thought about it recently, because I feel like, okay, while he's doing that and also wanting to help others, he's also been kind of looking for me. Because if you will, in that one spot where he was looking out over my ex and I, and we were in like this lower space, and it was like I came in to go into some more dense, heavier levels, but they're still there helping me energetically to release the stuff that I was picking up. So it wasn't just me doing this whole thing on my own. And yeah. There it was a cop car that came in this time to go around, and he saw me on my phone, so there's that. But I don't know, he might come back here to talk to me. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, but like that lower level thing, I feel like energetically and like at these higher self levels, he's been keeping an eye out for me for when the time's right. And when I had to come into that space of okay, when I first connected with, or realized I was connecting with his energy in the dream, there was this sense of it's safe to come out now. And of course, all my crab placements, I'm super not good with that. You know, I'm super good at going into hiding, like in the deepest levels of myself. But then it makes sense if that's this connection, that he would be, you know, at the deeper levels of himself, aware that I am the hiding type and have a hard time coming out of hiding, that he would provide a sort of safety net, that frame for me to feel safe enough to come into. You know, and just like, here's the frame, I am the flow, right? So he provides, his energy provides this frame of safety and security, and it's safe to come out and do this work, you know. And then I start doing the work, and then embracing more of, you know, okay, like that heart space. Like my Venus is in Leo, and I've talked on here before about he's definitely a Leo. So when my heart wakes up, you know, I'm all about like the love and beauty and all those things. And, you know, I've talked about being my own art project. You know, it's like, now that I feel safe energetically to work through these things for myself, I'm able to flow and be more of me, allow me out into the world. And, you know, like this sharing on YouTube thing. And at the same time, I am confident that him as a Leo, his Venus will be in Cancer, and that's why he's so aware that it's, you know, I got to come out of hiding, you know. And then it's, as I thaw out through the heart space, it helps him to also sort of thaw out through the heart space, because, you know, I mean, it's me waking up and all that stuff. You know, and it was him providing that, or his energy providing that safety for me to be able to do that too. Anyway, I don't know, the cops like parked over there. There's like this drop off area. It's like a big, a ravine. I don't know. There's a hill, and I know they just like chuck mud over there a bunch, but he's just like hanging out over there now. Anyway, it's been an hour and 19 minutes, so I feel like this is I'm still feeling pretty good about this, you know, for this being the 1 year anniversary today. I feel pretty good about this being a video that I would go to with there, or from there. But there's also food plans being talked about now in this conversation. I like participating in those because it means I get food. So also, I feel like this is a good length, you know. I mean, obviously I've gone over a few times, but whatever. Yeah. And I can't think of anything else that I want to add anyway. I think I covered all the big points that I wanted to talk about today. So, yeah. As always, I appreciate you. Till the next time. See ya.